Okay everybody, so one of the really great things that I like about RBA is that it talks about what is the relationship between population and performance. So you and I know that there are two types of accountability, population and performance, okay? But one of the most critical questions is, well, how do those two types of accountability fit together? So let's look at that. What is the linkage between population and performance? And again, I'd like to acknowledge Becky and Shelley from MSD because this is a practical example. So we have a population result or outcome here. Youth in New Zealand are safe, strong and independent. Okay, youth in New Zealand are safe, strong and independent. Remembering that a population result or outcome is a high-level aspirational statement, okay, for a population. And there are two indicators here, and remembering that indicators are pieces of data which enable us to measure whether or not a population result or outcome is occurring. And there are two indicators here, youth crime rates and NCEA attainment rates. For the youth crime rates, we want to turn the curve down, okay? For the NCEA attainment rates, we want to turn the curve up. Then what we've got, and we had a little look at this before, is a NGO delivering this particular program, which is the Breakthrough Integrated Case Management Program. Let's put up some example performance measures. How much, how well, any better off? How much, how well, any better off? How much did we do? Number of clients. How well did we do it? Completion rates, percentage. But is anyone any better off? The number and percentage of clients who did not reoffend, the number and percentage of clients who are in education. So as you can see, there's a population results and indicators, and there's also performance measures related to a service or program. But what's the linkage between the two? And in RBA, we talk about three types of linkages which make it really simple to understand the relationship. So firstly, we talk about a contribution relationship, okay? A contribution relationship. And what we say is that if organisations, agencies or systems are delivering client results or outcomes, then they are contributing to population results or outcomes. And it's really just common sense, because remember we had that ends and means conversation? Well, this is the end and these are the means, okay? Really simple, common sense. There's a contribution relationship between client outcomes that are being delivered on the ground and also whole population results and outcomes. It's very simple. When we also talk about linkages, we talk about the alignment of measures. So as you can see here, we've got an indicator in the crime space, we've got an education indicator, and for this particular program we also have measures, performance measures, and one is in the crime space or did not reoffend, and one is in the education space. So there is an alignment of measures there, which is very important if you want to talk about what is the contribution between client outcomes and population results and outcomes. And last but not least, we also talk about appropriate responsibility. So you've heard me talking during our time together today that population accountability is about multiple stakeholders sharing the accountability for achieving results or outcomes for a population. Okay? Whereas performance accountability is about, for example, this particular provider holding the accountability for delivering outcomes to its clients, okay, outcomes to its clients. And we distinguish between those two types of responsibility because it's really important. If we said to this particular provider, actually we're going to measure your success using an indicator and a result, immediately you can see that we're setting that individual organisation up to fail, because no individual organisation can deliver on population results in their own right, okay, in their own right, because population results and achieving results or outcomes for a whole population is about multiple stakeholders sharing and working together to achieve the same, okay? So it's really important to understand that there are different types of responsibilities when talking about population versus performance. Okay, so here's an example of a results scorecard map. There is a results scorecard software associated with RBA, and it enables you to understand the relationship and the linkages and to report on population results, indicators and also performance measures. But here is a diagrammatic representation of the relationship between performance accountability, population accountability, and also a set of community partners who is taking a strategic leadership role in this space. So for example, I just use the top result here, or population outcome is tino rangatiratanga, and the indicator of success is the employment rate. And in this scenario, what would happen is that these community partners have agreed that they will work together collaboratively to achieve this population result measured through this indicator. But what they're also doing in this example is they're understanding what are the range of services, projects or initiatives that are being developed across the community, and what are the performance measures of success. And they've mapped those performance measures, how much, how well, any better off, how much, how well, any better off, to the result and indicator that these projects, services or initiatives most contribute to. And so what we start to see in this type of picture is what I call a clearer line of sight between the outcomes being delivered by multiple partners to clients and the contribution they make to whole of population results and indicators. Okay, so that clear line of sight and the linkages between performance and population are absolutely critical moving forward in terms of an outcomes-based contracting and an outcomes-focused sector. Okay, so we've talked a lot about data today, so a lot about quantitative data. Remember, population indicators are simply pieces of data which enable us to measure whether or not population results or indicators, population results or outcomes are occurring. And we've also talked about performance measures, again pieces of data about clients, how much, how well, any better off. But what we wanted to reassure you of today was that we also in RBA value qualitative data, so accomplishment stories, vignettes, evaluations, etc. And we really encourage you to partner qualitative and quantitative information together when you're demonstrating or showcasing the success of your service program or initiative linked to population results and indicators. So one of the objectives today, if you'll recall at the beginning of our hour session, was to understand, well, what is the relationship between RBA and streamlined contracting with NGOs? And in this table you can see that in terms of the RBA concepts and the outcome agreement and the outcome agreement management plan, there is a direct relationship. So in terms of the outcome agreement, we invite you to use RBA to identify the population outcome, okay, and also performance measures. And so a tick means that they definitely need to be in the outcome agreement because they set the scene, don't they, in terms of population accountability and also performance accountability. We need to know how much, how well, but in particular any better off, in order to understand whether or not that service program or initiative is actually an outcomes focused initiative. And then it's really good to understand, is there a linkage to a population outcome? Now, in terms of the indicator and the outcome agreement, it is optional, but we highly recommend you do it. And we highly recommend you include an indicator because of that line of sight issue that I talked about before. How would we know that this service program or initiative is actually contributing to a population result or outcome if we haven't got a clear and agreed framework around the same? In terms of the outcome agreement management plan, this again is an optional. We invite you to use RBA as part of the outcome agreement management plan. Optional but highly recommended. And if we think about things like the story behind the baseline partners, what works, and the strategy and action plan, you'll recall that those are all part of the 7 questions, okay? The 7 questions which take us from ends to means. So if the performance measures, and in particular is anyone any better off as our end, we actually need to work out how we're going to get there. So that's about applying the 7 questions and applying them collaboratively between funder and provider. And so the RBA framework provides you an opportunity to change the nature of your collaborative relationships between funders and providers and to really partner in terms of turning those curves, okay, in terms of turning those curves. So again, it is optional in terms of utilising the 7 questions which take us from ends to means, but we really encourage you to do it because it does enable you to change the nature of your relationships and to also encourage partnered working together. So how does RBA improve your contracting? We've talked a little bit about that, but I just wanted to highlight here the common language. So you and I have a common language. So now we know that there's 237 from ends to means. We can talk about population or performance accountability, and we can actually talk to each other, not past each other. And that's one of the greatest benefits of RBA, is that the nature of our conversations are a lot richer. Okay? And we actually talk to each other, not past each other, about outcomes. And also, it produces powerful data because it enables us to measure not just participation, the number of clients. What it does is it enables us to measure whether or not those clients are actually better off. Surely that's the most critical question in terms of what was the quantity and the quality of the effect of the particular service program or initiative. It also enables us to ask and answer questions like, yes, should we buy more of these services or programs because they are really effective, or no, and then we ask ourselves, well, is that the right NGO for the job, and or is it the right program to invest in? But if we don't have an outcomes focused framework, we will never be able to answer those questions. Okay everybody, well I'm really sorry to say that it's the end of our 1 hour intro, and I can see the disappointment on your face, but I know that as part of the MB project there will be more opportunity for us to engage with each other. There will also be more support for you in terms of the utilisation of RBA and the MB Streamlining Contract Initiative, including RBA 101s and also training the facilitators. But on behalf of MB and Shapert and Associates, I'd like to thank you for spending this hour with us today, and would also like to extend an opportunity for you to ask any questions post our 1 hour introduction by contacting the MB project team or myself. So kia ora everyone, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Kia ora.